The next bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 3072. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 3072, number 7 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to public safety, the first engrossment.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Ramsey, Representative Lesh, to describe the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Senate File 3072 is the Omnibus Judiciary Data Practices Bill. The bill was negotiated between myself, Chair Scott, Chair Limmer, and Senator Latz. All 5 bills in this omnibus bill were vetted during the regular session and moved out of Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law Committee, and they had bipartisan consensus. The 5 bills have no fiscal cost. The first one is drones, regulating law enforcement's use of drones. Members may recall we've been trying to do this for around about a decade, and all those sessions between 2011 and now, we worked on it with the BCA, the ACLU, Minnesota Coalition on Government Information, and it has broad consensus language with support from all of these groups. The bill requires law enforcement agencies to obtain a search warrant for the use of a drone unless one of the exceptions laid out in the bill applies. These exceptions are during the aftermath of an emergency, over a public event where there is heightened risk, to counter the risk of a terrorist attack, to prevent the loss of life and property in natural or man-made disasters, to conduct a threat assessment, to collect information over a public area if there is reasonable suspicion of criminal activity, for crash reconstruction purposes, for officer training or PR purposes, and for non-law enforcement purposes at the request of a government entity. The bill provides limitations on the use of drones. For example, a facial recognition technology cannot be used unless a warrant is obtained. The version in this omnibus bill provides for actually more transparency than the bill as passed out of the House Judiciary Committee. The additional language requires that law enforcement agencies have written policies on drone use and are subject to public comment on those policies, and where applicable, subject to a public hearing. The data is protected and considered non-public. Law enforcement must delete the data within 7 days unless it's part of an active criminal investigation. And the bill requires law enforcement agencies to document each use of a drone, and the Department of Public Safety must submit an annual report to the legislature. The second bill in the omnibus bill is appeals court opinion criteria for publishing. Those of you who are attorneys know that if you cite a case that is not officially published in the official reporters, when you're submitting a memorandum or a brief to the court, you have to follow a specific procedure, citing it as non-published, and then including a photocopy of the opinion itself. It's kind of a pain, and it's sort of antiquated because it dates from the days when attorneys and judges had all those reporter books with the stripes on them up on their bookshelf behind their desk that they took the pictures in front of. Those are reporters, and all those were contained reported decisions in those books. This recognizes that way of looking at cases has been antiquated, and it allows the courts to remove the restrictions on the type of cases that the Minnesota Court of Appeals can designate as being a published decision. I maintain this is a separation of powers issue as well, because really this should be up to the courts to decide how they want their cases reported to the courts in the case of a legal argument. The third bill is a search warrant required for electronic communication information. That's Section 4. This is a consensus bill. The ACLU supports the bill as well. It allows law enforcement agencies to access your emails and texts without a warrant if they're 6 months or older. This closes that loophole and makes it clear that law enforcement agencies need to get a warrant for the content of your emails, regardless of how old they are. So now you got to get a warrant if you got older emails. There was that old antiquated provision about the 6 months or older. Now that's off the table. This fixes it and says they got to get a warrant no matter how old they are. The fourth bill in the omnibus bill concerns electronic tracking warrants. Those of you who may recall the old Kingfisher and Stingray debates from 2010 to 2012. we created a legal entity called a tracking warrant. And there were some issues related to the reporting of those tracking warrants. The purpose of them was to make sure that we were able to know when people's locations were being tracked. What happened after that, in the years after, was that law enforcement applied for these warrants under the aegis of federal law, under other state law. Those provisions in those warrants and the affidavits submitted to the court by law enforcement for those warrants were all private. They were not public. So when the application for the warrant and the affidavit went to a judge, the judge would seal all of it, because the judge would say, well, I can't parse this between which is public and which isn't. So this resolves that issue. It states that location tracking warrants for electronic devices have their own restrictions and requirements, and it exempts location tracking warrants from the other filing, sealing, and reporting requirements that apply to two different types of warrants for interception of wire, electronic or oral communications, and pen register and trap and trace warrants. The fifth and final bill in the omnibus bill is the scope of location tracking warrants. So this is a request from the BCA. They've run into situations when certain companies fail to comply with the warrant or administrative subpoena, suggesting that the language did not include their technology. One example was Snapchat. Snapchat was not complying with the warrant, arguing that it was not an electronic device. So fine, whatever. This section fixes that loophole in current law by expanding the scope to include identifying information associated with a single entity or account within an application or services that may be used on multiple devices like Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter. And it adds the notion of that unique identifier. I repeat, members, that this is a consensus bill. It's bipartisan, bicameral, and I would ask for your support.
There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Barr moves to amend Senate File Number 3072, the first engrossment. The amendment is coded A20-0787.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Barr, to your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise today to discuss what is Section 4 in the bill before us, the warrantless searches. The amendment specifically deals with state government buying data on the open market from your use of your cell phone. Currently, I am well aware that I confirmed that Met Council is buying data on your cell phone to see if you're in the park. They measure park usage via cell phone data. Department of Transportation uses it to see if you're speeding through their construction zones. I'm kind of curious just exactly how many other places our government is using our cell phone data and how they're tracking us without a warrant. While this is technically metadata, it is only a small jump from metadata to individual tracking when we have this capability already. And I do realize that this is technically a bill out of order, as the statute that's being changed is not actually addressed in the bill before us. So I will be withdrawing the amendment, but I did want to bring this up and continue the conversation around the wireless or the data the government is using without obtaining a search warrant first. With that, I'd like to withdraw the amendment, please.
Representative Barr withdraws his amendment. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File Number 3072.
Third reading. Discussion. The member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Muted.
Representative Scott.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to encourage a yes vote on this bill. Many parts of this bill have been worked on for 2 years with stakeholders. It's gone through the Legislative Commission on Data Practices. And so thank you to Chair Lesh and the other members that helped reach agreement on this bill. And so I would just encourage a yes vote to members. Thank you.
Further discussion to the bill. Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I'd reiterate what was stated by Chair Scott, that these are consensus provisions. I did not get everything that I wanted in this bill, but I appreciated the willingness of Chair Scott and other Republicans to work with us on to make sure that we got some of these really important provisions finally done. Yes, some of these have been worked on for 2 years, but some of them have been worked on for darn near 10 years, and finally getting them done is very welcome. So thank you. I ask for your aye vote.
Hearing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on Senate File 3072.
Acom.
Acom, aye.
Acom, aye. Albright.
Albright, aye.
Albright, aye. Anderson.
Anderson, aye.
Anderson, aye. Backer.
Backer, aye.
Backer, aye. Bonner.
Bonner, aye.
Bonner, aye. Barr. Barr, no. Baker.
Baker, aye.
Baker, aye. Becker, Finn.
Becker, Finn, aye.
Becker, Finn, aye. Bennett.
Bennett, aye.
Bennett, aye. Bernardi.
Bernardi, aye.
Bernardi, aye. Bierman.
Bierman, aye.
Bierman, aye. Bow. 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 Brand.
Brand, aye.
Brand, aye. Cantrell. Cantrell.
Cantrell, aye.
Cantrell, aye. Carlson, A.
Carlson, A. Aye.
Carlson, A. Aye. Carlson, L.
Carlson L. Aye.
Carlson, L. Aye. Christensen.
Christensen, aye.
Christensen, aye. Claflin.
Claflin, aye.
Claflin, aye. Considine.
Considine, aye.
Considine, aye. Daniels.
Daniels, aye.
Daniels, aye. Doubt. Doubt, aye. Davids. Davids, aye. Davney.
Dabney, aye.
Davney, aye. Dean.
Dean, aye.
Dean, aye. Damath.
Damath, aye.
Damath, aye. Detmer. Detmer, aye. Driscollowski.
Truskowski, aye.
Truskowski, aye. Eklund.
Eklund, aye.
Eklund, aye. Edelson.
Edelson, aye.
Edelson, aye. Elkins.
Elkins, aye.
Elkins, aye. Erickson. Erickson, aye. Fabian.
Fabian, aye.
Fabian, aye. Fisher. Fisher.
Fisher, aye.
Fisher, aye. Franzen.
Franson, aye.
Franzen, aye. Freiberg. Freiberg, aye. Garofalo.
Aye.
Garofalo.
Garofalo, aye.
Garofalo, aye. Gomez.
Gomez, aye.
Gomez, aye. Green. Green, aye. Grossel.
Rossel, aye.
Grossel, aye. Gruenhagen.
Gruenhagen, aye.
Gruenhagen, aye. Gunther.
Gunther, aye.
Gunther, aye. Haley.
Haley, aye.
Haley, aye. Halverson.
Halverson, aye.
Halverson, aye. Hamilton.
Hamilton, aye.
Hamilton, aye. Hanson.
Hanson, aye.
Hanson, aye. Hassan. Hassan. Hausman.
Hausman, aye.
Hausman, aye. Heinrich.
Heinrich, aye.
Heinrich, aye. Heinzman.
Heinzman, aye.
Heinzman, aye. Her. Her. Hertos.
Hertos, aye.
Hertos, aye. Hornstein.
Hornstein, aye.
Hornstein, aye. Howard.
Howard, aye.
Howard, aye. Hewitt.
They're coming out of their
Aye.
houses with
Hewitt.
Hewitt, aye.
Hewitt, aye. Johnson. Johnson, aye. Jordan.
Jordan, aye.
Jordan, aye. Jurgens.
Jurgens, aye.
Jurgens, aye. Keel.
Keel, aye.
Keel, aye. Cleavorn.
Yeah. Cleavorn, aye.
Cleavorn, aye. Cagle.
Cagle, aye.
Cagle, aye. Katiza Wattoon.
Katiza Wattoon, aye.
Katiza Wattoon, aye. Kosnick.
Cosmic, aye.
Cosmic, aye. Kreshaw.
Grisha, aye.
Kreshaw, aye. That wasn't, yeah.
Members, please
Grisha, aye. Yes,
only
that was Grisha.
respond when your name is called.
Kreshaw.
Grisha, aye.
Kreshaw, aye. Kunish Podine.
Kulish Podine, aye.
Kunish Podine, aye. Lehman.
Lehman, aye.
Lehman, aye. Lee.
Lee, aye.
Lee, aye. Lesh.
Lesh, aye.
Lesh, aye. Liebling.
Liebling, aye.
Liebling, aye. Lean.
Lane, aye.
Lean, aye. Lilly.
Lily, aye.
Lilly, aye. Lippert.
Lippert, aye.
Lippert, aye. Listlegard.
Listlegard, aye.
Listlegard, aye. Long.
Long, aye.
Long, aye. Lucero.
Lucero, yes.
Lucero, aye. Lewick.
Lewick, aye.
Lewick, aye. Mahoney.
Mahoney, aye.
Mahoney, aye. Mann.
Man, aye.
Mann, aye. Mariani.
Mariani, aye.
Mariani, aye. Markwart.
Markwart, aye.
Markwart, aye. Mason.
Mason, aye.
Mason, aye. McDonald.
McDonald, aye.
McDonald, aye. Mecklin.
Meckland, aye.
Mecklin, aye. Miller.
Miller, aye.
Miller, aye. Moeller.
Moeller, aye.
Moeller, aye. Moran.
Sorry, Moran, aye.
Moran, aye. Morrison.
Morrison, aye.
Morrison, aye. Munson.
Munson, no.
Munson, no. Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Murphy, aye. Nash.
Nash, aye.
Nash, aye. Nelson, M.
Nelson M, aye.
Nelson, M, aye. Nelson, N.
Nelson, N, aye.
Nelson, N, aye. New. New, aye. Nor.
Nor, aye.
Nor, aye. Nornis.
Nornis, aye.
Nornis, aye. Novotny.
Novotny, aye.
Novotny, aye. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, yes.
O'Driscoll, aye. Olson.
Olson, aye.
Olson, aye. O'Neill.
O'Neill, aye.
O'Neill, aye. Pulowski.
Pulowski, aye.
Pulowski, aye. Purcell.
Purcell, aye.
Purcell, aye. Petersburg.
Petersburg, aye.
Petersburg, aye. Pearson.
Pearson, aye.
Pearson, aye. Pinto.
Pinto, aye.
Pinto, aye. Poppy.
Poppy, aye.
Poppy, aye. Poston.
Poston, aye.
Poston, aye. Pryor.
Pryor, aye.
Pryor, aye. Quam.
Quam, aye.
Quam, aye. Richardson.
Richardson, aye.
Richardson, aye. Robbins. Robbins, aye. Runbeck.
Runbeck, aye.
Runbeck, aye. Sandell.
Sandell, aye.
Sandell, aye. Sandsted.
Sandsted, aye.
Sandsted, aye. Sauk.
Oak, aye.
Sauk, aye. Schumacher.
Schumacher, aye.
Schumacher, aye. Schultz.
Schultz, aye.
Schultz, aye. Scott.
Scott, aye.
Scott, aye. Stevenson. Stevenson. Sundin.
Sundin, aye.
Sundin, aye. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski, aye. Tabke.
Tabke, aye.
Tabke, aye. Tice. Tice. Tice, aye. Torkelson.
Torkelson, aye.
Torkelson, aye. Erdahl.
Erdahl, aye.
Erdahl, aye. Vang.
Vang, aye.
Vang, aye. Vogel.
Vogel, aye.
Vogel, aye. Wagenius.
Wagenius, aye.
Wagenius, aye. Waslowick.
Woslowick, aye.
Waslowick, aye. West.
West, aye.
West, aye. Winkler. Winkler, aye. Wolgamott.
Wolgamott, aye.
Wolgamott, aye. Zhang Jie.
Sung J. I.
Zhang J, I. Zhang T.
Zhang T. I.
Zhang T, I. Joachim.
Joachim, I.
Joachim, I. Speaker Hortman. Speaker Hortman, I. Bull. Bull, I. Hassan. Hassan. Her.
Her, I.
Her, I. Stevenson.
Stevenson, I.
Stevenson, I.
There being 131 ayes and 2 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to.